Hey, thanks for jumping on, man. Thanks for jumping on. I'm
You're
such a
welcome.
fan.
Pleasure.
I'm such a fan, especially like in the '90s and stuff, like with Lighthouse Family. I'm from New Zealand,
Yeah.
and you guys like really broke the mold down in New Zealand, and so it's such a pleasure to like talk to you. I'm such a big fan of your song "Run."
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yes.
mint. So yeah,
Thank you.
thank you for jumping on. I don't
Pleasure.
want to take up like too much of your time. Obviously, I know
That's okay.
you've got
It's
quite a
okay.
busy schedule, so I'll
No
try not
worries.
to keep you too
No
long, mate.
problem.
So crack on, Tunde.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
so first of all, where are we talking to you from? You're based in London at the moment?
Yes, I'm based in London. I live in London. I was born in London. So I'm a
Born and
Londoner,
raised.
really. Even though I was raised in Nigeria, in Lagos. So
Yeah.
I went back to Nigeria when I was about 4 or 5. And so I grew up there and then came back again when I was about, like, finally, when I was about 17, 18, something like that.
Mhm.
So, but yes, I live in London. That's home. Even though when we started Lighthouse Family, the band, because I went up, Paul and I went to university in Newcastle, so which is up in the northeast of England. And so just, and then we started the band after college, after graduating, we started, and that kicked off, and you know the story there. But I lived in Newcastle for, I think I lived in Newcastle, even had a house there and everything. I lived there for like over 10 years. And but I think eventually what happened was just slowly all your friends from college
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and especially with work, because we'd have to come to London a lot, back and forth. But all your friends from college who we were all sworn to stay in Newcastle after graduating, that kind of thing. It was like, oh, yeah, oh, this is such a great town, we're not going to leave. And it is really. But eventually just find out that all your friends have moved and
Dispersed.
relocated. And so I just eventually just made the move and back to London. So
Well,
yeah,
also, I think I mean, I talk to a lot of musicians and that, and musicians from all over the world, and they all seem to eventually do make it to like these major cities like London. Like if you live in the UK, it's sort of where things are going on,
yes.
especially the time when Lighthouse Family broke out, like in the '90s. I think
Mm.
it's London was always that hub, wasn't it, for like creative
Yes,
people.
absolutely. And the
So
record labels as well. Yeah.
exactly. Um, I want to talk. There's obviously so much more to you than Lighthouse Family as well, and I do want to touch on solo stuff. But if we go back to the start, just to talk about Lighthouse Family,
Sure.
but also present, I want to sort of get your gauge on what do you feel about the industry these days in terms of like you broke out with Lighthouse Family in the '90s, and the world and the music industry was such a different place
Yes.
to what it is now. When you think of touring, promoting, recording, everything to do with it. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on how music in general has evolved from when Lighthouse Family broke out into music in the '90s?
That's a fantastic question. And I think if you ask most of you, it's one of those questions that I have a very clear perspective and view on, just like you say, like what's the current landscape and compared to back then. But at the same time, you do still have to be careful how you say some of these things, because
Yeah,
sometimes people they latch onto the wrong end of the
yeah,
stick, when you say. But I remember when we were signed, that was those were the days when record labels would find an artist, encourage you to develop your craft and your artistry. They would really stick by you through your development stage, because and invest in you. I mean, like, to record a demo, I remember back then, was not a cheap feat. So, and if you think about it, just graduating from college, I mean, where are you going to find the money to do that? But you do have to do that, find a way of doing that, so that record labels and people can at least hear your craft and hear what you're all about.
yeah,
So in those days, I mean, we got signed. I mean, we got signed really on the back of maybe one or two songs, which was Ocean Drive, and a couple of other demos, which is
yeah,
pretty unheard of. We got like a 6 album deal on the back of that. But the record company after that, they gave us the space and the time, and were very, very supportive in our development stage. So they supported till we were able to, develop what we were doing and write more demos and then go in and record an album and stuff like that. Things have changed nowadays. I mean, I think if you a lot of it is based on the record company wants to, they normally nowadays, what you see happening is they look for people or artists to latch onto who already have a market, already have a following through a lot of these social media avenues. And that's a great thing, because it means the doors are open for people, if you can, get yourself noticed on social media. But even that is not as easy as it. I mean, they peddle that idea around and say, oh yeah, Justin Bieber was discovered from YouTube and and TikTok and this, that, and the other. But for every Justin Bieber that's discovered, I guarantee you there are like 1,000 other similar
waiting
that fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
So and those might be really talented, credible artists. But I mean, I know in my time I've met some incredible artists who people would never get to hear what they do. Never. It's not going to happen. But I know those people and I've heard what they do. And I just think, oh my God, that is just amazing if you had the opportunity to be like signed. So that's kind of how the landscape has changed a lot in that respect. Record labels I'm not sure how much they develop artists anymore. They just kind of find the ones that already have a sort of like following, and then they latch on to that because it means there's already a market to sell to. And so there's a lot of talent out there that we're probably never going to get to hear. There's but also what then happens when that becomes the case is I'm sure it's the same where you are in New Zealand, right? You switch on the radio and it's almost like there's this kind of prototype of a particular type of thing that it's just this. It's like a mold. It's like a cast, like a mold rather in a bowl. This cast is like cookie cut, and you notice that there's a lot of the artists just sound the same.
Yeah,
there's no. It's not like you say back then.
There's no uniqueness to
no uniqueness. I mean, Lighthouse Family is totally different to Oasis. It's totally different to Fine Young Cannibals. Totally different to Ashade. Totally different to Soul to Soul, and all these kind of things. Nowadays, it's like it's like the same thing constantly on the radio, and you think, oh my goodness, like how is anybody going to get a chance to be heard if you're as an artist who does something different? It's almost like there's some sort of big brother up there that's just dictating what the taste should be to the listener, and that's what I
mean. A lot of really unique artists do break through, and in my opinion, Lighthouse Family were one of them. Going back like 25 years, because if you think of it, at the time that you guys broke through, you had a mixture of Britpop, so your Oasis, your Blurs, and that. So that sort of appealed to the rockier side of people, or the guitar heavy side of people. And then on the flip side, you had this huge wave of pop. So you had the Spice Girls and Aqua and Vingle. So you had that market, and then all of a sudden, Lighthouse Family came through, and you've got songs like High and and tracks like that were very different to what was considered cool at the time, and you did it.
Yes.
So if you think back of then, like, did you realize you had something that was quite unique and very different to the whole cookie cutter molds that were going on with pop and Britpop at the time?
Yes. Well, I think we did, because when we had a certain perspective on just what we wanted to do, on life in general. We'd kind of, I mean, I remember even we'd worked a little bit, so it's not like we were just like green behind the ears, these young whippersnapper teenagers that didn't know. We'd had a life, we lived a bit. So
Newcastle under your belt.
Sorry?
Yeah, Newcastle under your belt.
Yes, Newcastle, absolutely. And you know what I mean? That, like you say, which is away from sort of like the big city, London, and whatever goes on down there. And so we had a certain idea of what we wanted to do, and we would be in the studio like all day, all night, just Paul and myself, just having all these kind of discussions. Sometimes philosophical discussions about life, sometimes spiritual discussions about life. What life is. What does it mean? Life, what is it, and how to live it? All these kind of things. And these were the kind of discussions we would have all the time. And those were the things that that went into the songs we were writing. It was like, there was, the best way I can always describe it is just say, there was like a spiritual angle to in what we did, like a soulful spirit, not in a kumbaya, go to church, sing hallelujah type of way, but in a very kind of down to earth, almost like you were sitting having a conversation with with somebody, with a good friend. Those were the kind of stuff. But the thing is, you see, when you do those kind of things from an artistic point of view, and we were clear, and we were aware that it was totally different. It's different to the pop thing. It was different to the Brit pop thing. It was but it was more in line with the soul side of things. But at the same time, it wasn't like, because if you say soul, generally you're thinking about, oh, all these songs, hey, lady, baby, maybe, and all this, which is great. I mean, it's entertaining, but it's not. You won't find any of that sort of stuff in our songs. So it had this soulful, spiritual dimension to it. And we just did it because that's what we liked. As I said, it came out of our conversations and stuff like that. So we did it to please ourselves. And whether it was going to be successful, nobody had a clue, you know. So, but it was.
Was there ever a singular moment that you can think of looking back where, you know, everyone measures, and this is a question I've asked a lot of people as well, and I always get very different answers to it, because everyone has a very different interpretation of success, and they measure success in different ways and different levels. Mm-hmm. Was there ever a singular moment for you where you thought, okay, I've made it? You know, musicians go out there and, you know, you want to be famous, you want to make a nice dime here and there, and, you know, there's all of that. But was there ever a singular moment for you where you thought, okay, dream accomplished, I've made it?
Mm. Yeah, well, in a strange kind of way, I think what kind of happens, and for me, I can speak for myself personally. I suppose maybe if Paul was here, his answer might be different, you know.
Yeah.
Like, for me, there are loads of moments, just very short synopsis, just to give you, and then I'll expand on it. There were loads of moments that made me think that. And but it had nothing to do with or maybe having a hit or selling lots of records, you know, because I've got loads of all these platinum discs and stuff like that in my house downstairs. I hardly even put them up on the wall. I just store them away in a room. They just, like, you know, there's maybe one in the living room, but the rest I just file them away. But what it was for me, and this happened quite a few times. Some I can't really remember, some, you know, and it still happens till today, would be when somebody would come to us and say, oh, you know, I don't want to take up your time, but I just want to let you know. And then they'll tell you this really moving story of how maybe a song like Lifted, for instance, like how much it meant to them, how it got them through a difficult path. I'll give you an example. So I was speaking to somebody. This happened during an interview, one of these interviews I was doing a few months ago. And the DJ, you know, after the interview, the DJ, it was a radio interview. So it was live. Afterwards, he then said, oh, do you mind? I need to tell you a story, because he just felt that I needed to be aware of this. I said, oh yeah, sure. He had this radio program show, and he played a lot of songs and stuff. And there was this particular family, and this lady in particular, who used to call in a lot, and Lifted turned out to be her favorite song. She just loved the song. So he kind of got to know them because they'd call the radio station. And he said, so eventually, after a number of years, she became sick, and it was a terminal illness. Long story short, she ended up in hospital. Family was around her. And you know the way in the hospital, how the hospitals will have like a radio tannoy. They'll have sometimes their own, either the radio station located that they're tuning to, or their own internal radio station. So there's always music sometimes in the corridors as you're walking. And she was saying, so her son had come and told him this story that, oh, the final day when his mother passed away, and she was the one that, I mean, they all loved Lighthouse Family, but for her in particular, Lifted was her favorite song. She used to call in a lot to get it played. So she was lying there, and at the moment the family was around her in the hospital, he said, at the moment she inhaled and took her final breath, as she exhaled and went, coincidentally, Lifted came on.
Oh wow.
On the piano in the rate on in the
Yeah.
hospital on the, and she said it was just, he said it was just such a moving moment and such a poignant moment for the whole family, especially for this woman. Now, I wasn't there. I didn't plan that. It is not, you know, I know when we, for me, I know Lifted is a very spiritual song because I know when we wrote it, the conversations we had, what went into it, and what the song is about. But to kind of get this feedback when it comes back to you, and there's loads of different stories like this, and people come and tell you this sort of stuff, it's so humbling and so, and those are the kind of incidents, the stories that make me think, it's not like I think, oh, I've made it, but it's, you kind of feel that, oh, you've been a part of something significant.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that, to be, because it's out in my control. You know, it's like having a child. You know, as a family, you have a child. You know, once the child is out of your hands and gone, that's it. The child goes and does its own thing. It's the same
Yeah.
thing with the songs. You know,
Yeah.
and a friend of mine told me this story one time. He says, we were writing this song. He said, this other songwriter friend of mine, we were co-writing the song. He said, isn't this amazing that these songs? I said, what do you mean? He said, we've been sitting here for 2 hours wrestling this song to the ground to kind of get into some fun. And now we've finally done it and we're satisfied with it. They're sitting there with our guitars. He said, but the strange thing is that then the song goes out. It goes out into the world. It's not yours anymore. But it goes out and it does its own thing, and it just goes on a walkabout through every corner of the world. And so then at some point, it could be a year, it could be 10 years, it could be, said, but at some point that song comes back and starts giving to you, giving everything that we've put into it, starts giving it back to you. And this is what he meant. It was like, you know, the way a song can go and touch people's lives and mean something. And those kind of stories are those are the things that make me think, yeah, we crossed the line. You know, like you say, you made it. You know, you involved in the race and you made it to the. I mean, there's still more to do. You know, because it never really ends, to be honest with you. But those are the moments for me. I mean, there are other moments where, for instance, my mother came and the first time she saw us play live at the Royal Albert Hall, and that was the first time I got the stamp of approval from my mother saying, "Oh, I understand." Yeah, do you know what I mean? I mean, those are that as well is a significant moment when you think, "Oh, you made it." But the main one are those stories, the feedback that the song brings and gives to you through all these little vignettes that are painted in other people's lives, and how significant your song, because you just never know when you're doing that stuff. You know, you write songs, High, Lifted, Ocean Drive and stuff, but they've got a life of their own.
Well, exactly. It's actually fascinating that because you know, one of the questions also that I want to ask is about, you know, your proudest accomplishments and stuff like that, and it sort of sounds like that sort of sums it up as well, because like I said, I asked that question to a lot of people, and most people admittedly sort of turn to more materialistic things, you know, when they won their first Brit or when they did their first show here or there. But like you said, you know, in your own way, a song has its own ebbs and flows in life form. And, you know, the song, you know, Lifted a hit, say 25 years plus ago. I remember hearing that song, and also High, a lot through the COVID period. And it's incredible the amount of times I heard it, because they're uplifting songs, you know, and those are the types of songs that when you're going through moments like that in life, like a pandemic, they're the ones that sort of, they lift you up, don't they?
Yes,
so it's incredible how it's had that sort of a life form.
Yes,
and that must make you very proud.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's because, like I said, that's one of every time it happens, and when you get that feedback, it's like you're just, you know, you're just wandering along, minding your own business, and then life just comes and it's like somebody just taps you on the shoulder to catch your attention, and it's like, oh, and you look, and then you see this glorious image, whatever, through these kind of stories, and that for me is, you know, I can't find any other way of saying it, but like you say, saying, "Oh, you've made it," because, but the thing is, it's not you. That's the beauty of it. It's like it's always a surprise. It's always a surprise, and I think those moments when things like that happen, they're so significant.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally agree. You know, Lighthouse Family is one part of who you are. You know, it's the band that made you, you know, the artist that you are today in part.
Yeah,
It's who people know you for, but it's not just who you are. You've also got your solo work, and
yeah.
you're also a father as well. So obviously managing family now. I want to ask you about family. Do they do your kids are your kids a fan of dad's work? Do you secretly look at their Spotify playlist? As you know, does Lighthouse Family or Tunde appear on their wrapped list at the end of the
Yeah.
year?
I'm not sure if it does.
You
You
want
know,
to
yeah,
look?
you know, because I'll tell you, this same thing happens sometimes. You know, I remember I'll be taking my daughter doing the school runs in the morning,
Yeah,
you know, because I do all of that, you know, take them to school. And there've been a few times when you'd be in the car driving and taking them to school, and on the radio, all of us, they'll be like, Lifted will come on the radio, and you're stuck right in front of the, you know, the red light says stop, so
yeah.
you stop there, and this song is playing on the radio. Your kids are in the back, and everybody's kind of like sheepishly
Do we say something?
sheepishly looking at each other like, you know, what do you say to that? It's kind of, you know, and you look across and there's another car on the other side also waiting in line, and totally no clue of what's going on inside
Yeah,
our car. And I just think if only they knew. So I mean, you know, it's my kids, they've been to like you know, especially last year, because, you know, over the past 3 years, COVID shut a lot of things down. So we weren't really able to do much. But last year we started doing things again. So they came to one or two of the festivals that I did, and, you know, and so they witnessed it for the first time. And I think slowly they do know, but it's just, I don't know, it's not I mean, you know, kids that age, they, like you
yeah.
say, they listen to all the rap and hip hop and stuff like that. But whenever those moments happen, they are aware of what I do and what it is. But it's just kind of like a sheepish kind of look and a wry smile, and then we just move on.
Have they shown any interest in going into music themselves? Do you think they've got that the musical bug from dad?
Nah, well,
No.
earlier on, because my little daughter, she started having guitar lessons and stuff, and then it got to a point where I felt like I was forcing her into it, and I didn't want
Yeah,
that, you know, so I just had to back off a bit. So she slowly just stopped doing it. Same thing with my daughter, you know, because I've got pianos in the house, so they'll go to the piano and tinker a little bit. But it's, you know, you just got to wait and allow them to sound kind of natural, if
naturally.
that's what they want to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
naturally gravitate towards it. But no, they're not. My daughter, I've heard her. She's a good singer. She sings. But I mean, the last time I heard her do that was months ago. I think they're so young at the moment. They just, you
Yeah,
know, it's
still trying
Snapchat
to
and
find their
TikTok.
place. And
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
So are you thinking of doing anything in terms of solo work? Is there, because I know that information that I've been given talks
Yeah.
about you sort of like diving into 70s songwriters and that type of thing,
Yes.
paying homage. So what can you tell us about that? Is there
Yes.
anything
Well,
in the works?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you had mentioned before, and that's true. You know, I've always, in between Lighthouse Family albums, because sometimes with our Lighthouse Family, you know what it's like in a band situation, everybody has to be in sync and in
Yeah, yeah,
agreement before you can move ahead and harmoniously make an album. It's like, so sometimes that takes a bit of time. Everybody drifts off to do their own thing. So in between those periods, I've always made solo records. I've been fortunate to be able to do that. And I think this, like 7 years ago, I made one of those, another solo record. I remember speaking with he's my friend, Mike Peden. He produced our first two Lighthouse Family albums. He's a good friend of mine. And I was like, I've got itchy fingers, you know, I want to do. And he said, oh, just come to New York. He was in New York at the time. He says, come to New York, like, and we'll just make a record. He says, don't put yourself through any stress. You don't have to write all the songs. You know, you can make a covers album. It's like you've earned the right to be able to do it. So I thought, and I'd never thought of that before. I just thought, actually,
yeah.
good idea. So I went to Brooklyn, New York, and we, like you said, we zoned in on that particular era, the 70s. And I mean, I grew up in the 70s in Lagos, as I said. And there are lots of songs that were on the radio, even in Nigeria at the time, that I just naturally really loved, like James Taylor songs and Bill Withers and stuff like that. So we zoned in on that period, and I mean, and there's so much to pick from that era.
Yeah.
So we made a record, you know, spent a couple of months or so, and made that album. But then what happened? Because I thought, oh yeah, and I was really happy with it. It had most of the same players that play on my Lighthouse Family records were the ones that played on the record, because a lot of them are Americans. They're like and based in New York. So, and I thought, oh great, you know. And then what happened was, I don't know, the call came again. Oh, let's make another Lighthouse Family record, just out of the blue. So I had to park that album I'd made and just put it away and left it there to marinate. And it had been marinating for like 7 years.
Wow.
So when the COVID incident happened, because it was just after we made the last Lighthouse Family record, and we had done a couple of tours, our second UK tour, and I think we were due to go to South Africa to continue the whole live performance touring thing, and then COVID happened. Everything just shut down.
Everything shut down.
So everybody's sitting there tweedling, not knowing what to do. And after about a year or so, because we weren't really sure when everything was going to open again, it just slowly came to me. A couple of things happened coincidentally, that was just fortunate, that brought my attention back to that record. And I just thought, oh, I was in the fortunate position of already having a record that I had. We kind of had this idea because I'd gotten some calls from South Africa that somebody had wanted me to feature on this South African artist's record. As you know, they thought, oh, they had a song and they thought my voice would perfectly suit it to do the song with her. But then that didn't happen. But what happened was it opened the door to explore the idea of doing stuff with other African artists, African singers. Because all the way in the back of my mind, while that record had been marinating, I'd always been thinking, actually, maybe I should just make it an album of duets or something like that, you know, instead of just me. Mm. And so that avenue opened. And so the last year, that's what we've been doing. So I've got this record that is just, I think it's amazing. It just sounds amazing. Some of the African artists that are on it with me, I mean, they are artists with huge followings in their own turf. You know, they're well known in their own environment already. So, but they're featuring with me on this record on a lot of the songs. And I think we've got a couple of things, loose ends to just tie up now. But the record sounded fantastic.
When are we going to hear it?
I can't wait for people to hear it.
Yeah.
It's going to be this year sometime, definitely. Brilliant. I think either during the summer or just after summer, because I know I've got a tour coming up starting in May. And obviously I'll be on the road for about a month while that's happening. So, but I know I do have to go to South Africa and do a couple of things just to tie up. But the record's done. I mean, everybody's contribution is already there and it's mixed and stuff like that. So that's going to be what people are going to be privy to hearing when the time comes. But it'll definitely be this year.
And that actually leads me perfectly to my final question about the tour, because I know you're doing a show.
Yes. Is
it Lafayette? I don't even know how to pronounce the name. Lafayette in London. You're doing. Is it the 3rd of June? You're doing that show.
Yeah. Let me see. The date I think is yes, Lafayette. I can't even see where it is. Yes, it is 3rd of June. Yeah, 3rd absolutely. Of June. So I know.
We're hoping to make it along to that one, so I can't wait to see you. But I want to ask you about the tour and what can we expect from the show? Like, are we looking at Lighthouse Family hits, solo hits, and obviously now that you've told me about the new album, I'm expecting a few songs from there. Yeah,
maybe one or two. Yes. Yeah. Well, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, I think the funny thing is, like, because people, everybody asks me this question because they, I suppose it's a common thing. If they think, well, if somebody goes off on a solo tour, but they've come out of a band, everybody thinks that maybe that person artist would just go and just be doing their solo stuff. and it's almost like people forget that all the Lighthouse Family songs are co-written by me. You know, I co-wrote Lifted, I co-wrote High. Yeah, so they're my babies as well. So definitely, I mean, I know people want to hear those songs. I love performing them. So even though it doesn't say, oh, Lighthouse Family Tour, it will in essence be a Lighthouse Family predominant show with those songs that you mentioned, that I'll be doing a lot of those songs. And yeah, we'll sprinkle one or two, because with the solo record, for instance, the new one, it's like not a lot of those artists are going to be around with me. So that they can, you know, so I might do one of those songs, it'll just be me. But to hear those songs in their full glory, I think the ideal situation to be in would be to have those artists come and perform live as well, so people could just be exposed to their talent. But yeah, it will be. I know it's going to be. It's a more intimate tour, which is like totally different to what we used to do as part of Lighthouse Family, which is like generally arenas and these sort of big things. So this one is more intimate, which I really like. So, but yeah, you'll be hearing a lot of those well-known Lighthouse Family songs, as well as a handful of my own solo stuff, that both the ones that people know, and maybe one or two from the new record.
Mate, I can't wait. Like I said at the start, I'm a very big fan from way back when. Won't say too many years because that'll reveal our ages. But I'm such a big fan. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, mate. And thank you so much for putting time aside to talk to us.
Pleasure.
I really hope the new record goes really well, and I can't wait to see you do the show in London. And I hope the tour goes really well. And thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandon. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Have a good day.